Now, no one's ever accused me of having the world's most reliable vehicles, and I'm not going to dispute that fact, but you just got to make up for it with determination and preparedness. So there's often a time when you're out on a trip somewhere and you need more than just the basic assortment of hand tools to get a job done. Maybe you're on a cross-country road trip, or you're just out going on a exploring backcountry expedition and you're going to be off the grid for a while. Or maybe you just drive a vehicle that's multiple decades old and it needs all the help it can get. Regardless of your reason though, it's really nice having a mobile, toolbox that has a pretty good selection of stuff in it to fix whatever you need fixing. Now ideally, you could just kind of, take everything with you all the time, but there are space limitations. So I'm going to run down what I've gathered over the years and what has maintained its status as present in my toolbox. Now, it's taken years to get to its current status, and believe me, it weighs quite a bit. £78, almost a bag of concrete. Now this is a basic craftsman toolkit with 3 drawers in it. So it's about 20 inches wide, about 12 high, and about 9 deep. Now I've got a few other boxes that I've tried over the years, and this is the one I've settled with. Of course it helped having it on hand, so I'm not going to complain about that. I found this to be a pretty good combination of holding just enough stuff and actually still being able to put it in the trunk or fit it into a limited amount of space. So we're going to break down, well hopefully not break down in the vehicle, but break down everything that's in this kit. The top drawers for a lot of the bigger, bulkier stuff and fluids and things like that. Also got the high-end snap-on divider here with a lot of miscellaneous small stuff. The first drawer contains pullers, punches, and other assorted smaller type tools. Second drawer is your basic assortment of sockets and screwdrivers. And last is wrenches and pry bars and stuff. So one of the hardest things about putting together a toolkit like this is discerning between the absolutely essential tools and just tools that are just convenience, tools I would say. Stuff that you don't really need to complete a job, it just makes life easier. Well, if you're sitting on the side of the road, it's better to have something that'll get the job done somehow. Now everybody's personal preference for what they have in here might be a bit different depending on what you normally work on. Like I put this puller kit in here just for the fact that I often work on small engines and I need to get the flywheel off or something, and without a puller like this you're just not getting it apart. So for me this is an essential piece of the toolkit. Others maybe not so much. I even have a pitman arm puller in here because, well, in addition to pulling off tie rod ends and the pitman arm off your vehicle, I've also found it very useful for small bearings and all sorts of other little jobs for a puller like that. Now I will forewarn you, you go for compactness here at the expense of organization. So if you've got toolkit OCD, you better look away because it's not pretty. And like I said before, you can't have every spare part for every vehicle in a universal type box like this. This is meant to be the base camp toolkit, not the spare toolkit for your vehicle. Now your basic car toolkit, that's a whole separate deal there. I mean, every one of my vehicles has basically a bare essentials kit of your most basic hand tools and essential parts. So things like fluids, your jumper cables, any specialty parts, like a fuel pump or something that you might need, that's all vehicle specific and really only needs to be kept in that car that you're using. Doesn't help having it taking up space in the big kit. Again, another example of a basic car kit, just the essentials. Screwdrivers, some sockets, some vice grips, and specialty tool like the spindle nut wrench. I mean, you're not going to use this in another vehicle, so you might as well leave it in here permanently so you never have to forget it and leave it at home. you know, this is where your fix-a-flats come into play, and basic stuff like a fire extinguisher, that should be part of every vehicle. Well, here's the spread for the top row. I guess we'll start off in the back there. I got part of a tube of grease because, you know, you can't fit the whole thing in there, and half a tube's better than no tube, so that's what we got. Next up is some Russian-made carburetor cleaner, because you've only got one can, so you better make sure it's good stuff and that it counts. Next up, we got some ether, because you never know if something's being stubborn to start, or if you got to seat a tire back onto the bead, or just general mayhem and fire. And then we got some PB blaster for, you know, trying to get some rusted nuts loose, and of course WD-40 you always need around in case you get a wet distributor cap and you got to spray it in there to get that going. Some basic oil and a nice little container there. Some hand cleaner, because if you're really getting into a heavy repair, you might need to clean up. And this is a more recent addition, is the butane fuel torch. You know, you could put a regular propane torch in there, but the can is so much bigger. It's kind of, you know, it's not great for space efficiency. Now, butane doesn't burn quite as hot as propane, but for most jobs or heating up your lunch or whatever, it'll work. Got a tape measure for general purpose. Of course, a freebie Harbor Freight multimeter. You always need a hammer for smacking stuff. Some loose wire. I mean, yeah, I got a few loose wires around. Some Scotch Brite pads. General assortment of very fine to coarser sandpapers. Some bulk gasket material in case you need that. Wire brushes, toothbrush for cleaning up stuff. Big old bag of zip ties. You're gonna need those. Some gum bands in case you never know what you might need them for. And a bag of just miscellaneous nuts, bolts, and washers and screws, and, you know, basic hardware kit. Anything you can think that you might need. Oh yeah, and some coat hangers. You know, they're pre-condensed here, but coat hangers are always great for, you know, putting an exhaust back together or something. Oh yeah, and some gloves too. These ones kind of suck, but I lost the previous set that I had. Now I can't figure out how to get everything back in there. So we'll go through the miscellaneous junk box, and starting that off is an electrical assortment. Now, like I said, you can't be afraid of disorganization, because I've got everything from fuses, a little assortment of common light bulbs, trailer bulbs, electrical connectors, crimps, all kinds of stuff. But basically, you know, I kind of went through the electrical drawer and just took an assortment of a little bit of everything. Next up's a random spring, because you never know if you need to hook up a throttle return or something. A couple of, you know, RTV and gear oil tubes for easy application. A little new copper washer for brake line fitting. Random brake line hold down I had sitting around. A fuel line little crimp fitting. Piece of fuel line with a zip tie on it. I must have been using this as a plug or something to, you know, cap off a line. You can jam a bolt in there and clamp it down with a hose clamp, and you got yourself a cap. Speaking of hose clamps, you gotta have a lot of hose clamps. I can't stress that enough. Moving on to the tape selection, we got some rubber friction tape, some cheap electrical tapes, a double-sided tape, some Teflon tape, some electrical tape, and a mini roll of duct tape. Now, it's sometimes tough to find a mini rolls of duct tape. Maybe you just take your big roll and you kind of fold it into a flat square, and then you just keep, you know, get yourself a little swath of that, and you'll be good to go. Got to have some paracord for some general rope, you know. You never know what that could come in handy for. Some plumber's banding, some wire, some RTV sealant. I like to keep a couple of hose barbs in there, just in case you end up blowing out a heater core or something like that, and you need to loop the lines together to bypass it. If you don't have a connector or something like that, you're kind of out of luck. So I think those are handy. A couple of rogue bolts that have come out in there. More wire. That one's already got connectors on it. Some tire valve stems. I have a whole bunch of these, so it's always good keeping these around. If one of these dry rots or breaks, that'll ruin your day. Bag full of cotter pins. I don't know why soapstone's in there. I never use it even in the shop. Now this bag here, this is a whole bunch of E-clips, C-clips, O-rings, little sheet metal screws. I see some more vacuum caps in there. That's just a general assortment out of my bulk bins. I took one of everything, threw it in there. Here was a cheap set of batteries I had. It was a 3-pack of all these different little button cells. So, never know. Gotta have your, got Loctite, JB Quick Weld. I mean, regular JB Weld's good, but Quick Weld will, it'll harden up faster and, get you back on the road. So, little sample packs, small stuff. Again, saving space is key. Got a little pack of shop towels, some earplugs, in case you're, you gotta try to sleep next to the freeway. Some matches for lighting stuff on fire. I have a very thorough first aid kit here. I got some Bayer aspirin. There's some Motrin in here. Some Benadryl for in case somebody has a reaction. Some Band-Aids. Some gauze. Disinfectant pads. That's all you need. Alright, well, on to the first drawer. Starting off with some fuel line. This usually isn't on the first drawer, but I ran out of space elsewhere. Quarter-inch fuel line's pretty generic. It's used a lot of places. If you get aggressive with it, you can make it work in 5/16 fittings. Heck, you might need to siphon some fuel. Just having some lengths of hose is always good to have around. This is a luxury tool here. I got a set of calipers, and these aren't really great ones. But I did get the old school vernier calipers, so there's no dial or battery or anything to break. It's just straight up metal to metal. So even if you got to ditch the case, usually these won't break or become unusable. Got a set of feeler gauges too. Couple sets of cheap Allen wrenches, utility blade, some picks, gasket scraper with some extra razor blades. Mirror on a stick, magnet on a stick. Can't go without one of those. A few hole punches, mainly the smaller sizes if you got to make a gasket or loosen your belt up a notch. Anything bigger, you just work your way around in a circle and make a bigger hole. Some specialty wrenches for chainsaw and weed eater carbs, because I do a lot of those. Spring-loaded center punch. Yeah, you're not really drilling anything maybe, unless you got a car battery powered drill, but I use them for a lot of stuff, popping out little pins or whatever. Some punches and circlip or roll pin drivers. Here's the gear puller assortment. I'd like to have a 3-jaw puller eventually, but just kind of running out of room. Some scissors, some fuel line fitting removers, Pitman arm puller, spring tool to try and save your knuckles, flashlight, gotta have a flashlight, Sharpie marker, for writing down the beer run list, a couple of C-clamps for clamping off fuel lines or brake lines that are leaking all over you, extra hitch pin or whatever for your trailer, gotta have a can opener, good old P38, yeah, Shelby company, tire valve tool. Need one of those if you're working on the valve stems. I don't know why I have these in there, but a couple of battery terminal adapters. So next level down, we got the screwdrivers. Of course, you need a nice big flat blade that doubles as a pry bar. And you got your basic selection of castaways that, didn't quite make the cut anymore for the main shop toolbox. So, yeah, they'll do just fine in the mobile box. And a lot of the tools I have in here aren't the top quality. They're basically leftovers or seconds or, garage sale finds, because you know, you really hope this thing never gets stolen, but there's always that chance when it's banging around in the back of the truck. So, you know, I'm sure there's a good bit of money in it already, but I'm not putting Snap-on or S&K tools in this thing. I never realized how many small sockets that I never used were actually in this box until I set them all out. Now you got to have your hex sockets and some Torx. One of these guys for that once every 4 years when you need it. I know this is making somebody cry. Well, now we're on to the bottom floor of this operation, and of course you got to have at least 1 or 2 sets of vice grips. Might not be a bad idea to swap one of these out for the needle nose variant, or heck, just add a third one because you always use vice grips. Got to have a good adjustable wrench here. Yeah, this one's metric, but you know, it'll work for standard. Good set of slip jaws or channel locks. These aren't the best, but that's what I had. Assortment of wrenches up to 15/16. Yeah, I mean, you can go bigger, but boy, you start adding a lot of weight, and it's kind of a fight between, you know, how often you're really going to use them, and, you know, just use the adjustable when you get up to that size. Got to have a hacksaw with some spare blades. You never know if you got to do some trail modifications. And a couple of things that a file. Man, having a good file can really, I mean, I use them all the time in the shop, and whether you're shaping something, making something fit, or man, who knows what, sharpening something, having a good file is always handy. We got a few of the cheap circlip tools. I mean, got to kind of have them. I've got the snap ring pliers in here in case you ever have to get into a transmission or something. You know, an extra set of U-joints or ball joints isn't going to help you much on the side of the road if you can't install them. Got some electrical wire crimpers and strippers. Of course, some needle nose and some side cutters. Good old pry bar. And a little brake tool for taking the retaining caps off of drum brakes. I really need the drum brake tool that takes the spring off, because I actually ran into the case this past week where I needed it and I didn't have it. But again, if you don't have drum brakes, maybe you don't have to worry about that nightmare. Another thing I've thought about adding is a pickle fork. However, you know, a lot of times putting a pry bar in there and hammering on it, you can get tie rod ends or ball joints to pop. But something I might think about in the future. I don't know. Is there anything obvious or you know, really helpful you think I don't have in this kit? Let me know. I don't know if I'll be able to fit it in there, but we can try. So there were 78 pounds of junk, and you're still guaranteed to not have the tool you need.